There we go. Hello, hello. How we doing, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. How you all doing on this fine Tuesday afternoon? I hope we are all doing well. I am feeling good today. Before I even got started with this today and got set up for today's video, I knew I was gonna be yapping. I have some things I want to yap about. I did a video this morning. I want to talk about that, talk through some of the details, some of the recruitment, discuss things with you guys. But in the end, as well, I've got yap time set aside. Let's take a look. Look, I've got yap time because there's something I really, really, really want to yap about. I really do. Something that just, it's been bothering me, and it's been bothering me, and it's been bothering me, and I just have to talk about it more and more. You know how it is. So we'll get there, but I'll try to set yap time around at the end so that we at least get through the other subjects first, even though, you know me, I be yapping pretty much all the time. It's never ending. But thank you all for being here. We got to fill these weeks. We've got a game on Saturday. There's a lot of time in between. So hopefully, the lives, the videos, everything that I'm putting together are helpful. Low key, we can win the league. I love the energy. I don't think so, but I love the energy and the enthusiasm and the optimism, and that's how I feel we should be as a club. I do. Drizzle, thank you for being here. And I wanted to say before I started, I know in the past when I have asked about people where they're from and all of that, I know people have said from Jamaica. There's some of you out there watching. So Drizzle, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you are okay. My best wishes to you and your family and everybody on the island, and I hope you are all right. And it's scary, scary stuff over there. So I really, really appreciate you being here, and I hope any of our viewers who are watching or not watching are safe and that everything is okay over on the island there, because that is a crazy, crazy, crazy storm. Stuart, as always, thank you so much for donating the memberships to the community and supporting as well. Thank you very much, Stuart. You're always a wonder, and have been an incredible blessing to the channel and all of that as well. So thank you, Stuart, very much for being a part of this community and supporting everybody and me and everything as well. It means a lot. Could not be doing this without you. And yes, hopefully, Drizzle, the time you spend here listening and hanging out with me helps you get through that and focus on something else from what's going on. And again, wish all the best for you all. So thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you for being here, and thank you, Stuart, and everybody. So yes, guys, I have some things I want to talk about today. We're going to start off talking about, I have the agenda and I have the yap time set aside. So we're going to start with talking about Casemiro, talk about the midfield rebuild, and we're going to talk about the Wingback, that interesting name that was linked to us this morning. Maybe it's real, maybe it's just a really basic thing at this point in time. I want to look at some of the stats that United are playing with right now. A very interesting statistical way of seeing exactly what we are doing right now. And then I want to yap, because I got some things to yap about. I really do. And I want to yap so hard, because I've brought this up time and time again recently, which is that, there's a preview to the yap, so you can't help myself. How much it annoys me, how much it bothers me. There are people, there's a lot of, look, everybody's welcome to their opinions. Everybody's welcome to do what they do, right? There's a lot of people with a lot of platforms, and there's a lot of people that influence things very much. Stuart, thank you. Enjoy. Good luck with the kids and all that, and I'll see you later. I'll see you when you watch it later, but thank you for supporting the channel, all that. There's a lot of people out there in the United space that have a platform, and everybody can have that platform, and everybody can use their voices for good, bad, or indifferent, right? And everybody's welcome to have different opinions and views and all of that. However, nothing irritates me more than when people just cannot say, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. Okay? Nothing bothers me more. Now, sometimes I've had people ask me why I do podcasts and things with Phil Brown. If you know, we did a podcast the other day. Many times throughout the course of our discussions, Phil and I have very, very different views on things. Very different views on things. We come from slightly different eras. Our ages are not that far off. They're a bit off, but slightly different eras. We have different perspectives, different viewpoints on things. But the thing I really, really love about Phil, and I respect him so much, and if you watched our podcast on Monday, he will tell you every time, Phil will tell you when he's wrong. And I aim to do the same. You know, specifically this Casemiro thing is one I could not have been more wrong about when we started the season. Phil will tell you he is wrong. And I love working with and talking with people who can admit that they were wrong, because look, at the end of the day, that is how you learn. That is how you sit and say, you know what? I can learn something. And I'm not talking about that means you have to believe everything is amazing. And I'm not saying that you have to believe that this and that. But what I'm saying is there's a responsibility when you have a platform, which is to say, you know, you want to be able to look at things and say, you know what? Because it pushes positivity, and people respect you more when you can admit and look at something and say, you know what, I got that wrong, and I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to take on more, and I'm going to grow from it, and I'm going to find out more, and I'm going to think more, and I'm going to learn more. I have learned so much over the last 3, 4, 5 years doing this in the United space, being wrong so many times and seeing how things improve. Right now, we might look at this Casemiro thing and say this is the right call, and you know what? 6 months, it might be not the right call. And that's okay. That can change. That can change. But no, Ray, I disagree with you. Admitting you're wrong doesn't lose you views. It doesn't actually make it worse. It's the opposite. The only way you can lose in this business is that if you are not authentic. The only way you can lose is if you're not authentic. Look, I've followed a lot of people on social channels and all sorts of different influencers and streamers and things in totally different spaces and things like that. The only people that really don't make it are the ones that are inauthentic. Being able to admit and grow is one of the best traits that people can have in these spaces. And people end up respecting it because it tells you that you're observing. The worst thing you can do is cap your ceiling on personal growth, cap your ceiling on learning. You know what I mean? People respect it if it's honest. People respect it if you're honest. People respect it if you are transparent. I have no problem with admitting I'm wrong. It just never happened. I know. Well, that's what I tell my wife, but for some reason it bothers her too. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. I have to be wrong. No. So it is what it is. So we'll get to it. We'll get to the Yap aspect of this and talk about it a bit more, because I really want people to get something, because there is a point to it as well. It's not about being right. It's about what's right. It's not about being right. It's about what's right. Okay. And the point being is that if you want to be able to evaluate United correctly and understand what's going on,
the next 10 Prem fixtures will be the big test to see if Amorim has actually figured it out. United are going to play lots of teams that are likely to sit in mid-blocks, which is where we struggle.
Yeah, I'm very curious about how we play in the next 10 games. Like Forest, I think is going to be a really interesting one, Alfred, for people to see as well. I think that's going to matter. But my point is, yeah, again, I agree with you totally there. Those are going to be really interesting games when we're not pressed. Are we going to play through more? Things like that will tell us quite a lot. But again, my point on that whole thing, and again, I'll get to it at the Yap part, is it is about what is right. What is right means you have to understand what is actually going on. And if you understand what is going on, it's going to allow you to assess things better and have a more real and correct view of things. That, separate to opinions and all of that, it's going to allow you to see so much. So let's get to Casemiro, though. Let's talk about our man Casemiro. I did a video this morning talking about it as well. A few weeks back, somebody pointed out to me from this chat and said, look into the stats on Casemiro and all of that, because it can show, that it's actually really, really, he's quite important. And I didn't believe it at the time. And I said, man, Casemiro, and we started the season, I remember before Arsenal, I was like, oh, Casemiro. I remember before the game against Chelsea, I was like, I'd given up because I was like, man, Casemiro starting, this doesn't make any sense. We're not building for the future. We're not doing what we need to do. And then when I looked into it a few weeks ago on video, I was like, damn, and kept watching the tactical breakdowns and rewatching games. I was like, wow, it's actually shocking. And what I'm really, really happy that I can do now, and it's a rare instance when you get to use one of these stats, because these are American stats that we use a lot in American sports, where because of the nature of how the games are, there's a lot of different there's a bunch of different advanced stats and technical stats and things like that really tie in to assessing players that you don't get in football at this point in time. And one of them is on off. Now, you don't get this a lot in football because you don't get a lot of on off. Player comes on, they often play the whole game. You only make a few subs, and all of that. But Casemiro is an interesting one where, because every single game, I think virtually, we can see here he's coming on and coming off, or he's coming off rather, at 60 minutes, and then he's not played a few. We're getting a really good measure of this because he's not just doing 90s all the time. When we look at his stats, it's shocking here, right? We have 2 points per game when he plays, first of all, which is big. 10 goals scored, 3 goals against when he plays. And, if you look at this over here, his on-off, this is a per 90 stat, by the way, is plus 1.42. Now, that means that when Casemiro is playing, United are almost a goal and a half better than their opposition per 90. That is insane. It's hard to express just how good a number that is per 90, by the way. And yes, 3 goals conceded in total with him on the pitch. Okay. That's a goal conceded about every 150 minutes when he's on the pitch, while otherwise we're conceding at a significantly higher rate than that. I think we've conceded 13 other goals without him on the pitch between all competitions. So it's quite exceptional. Now, it's interesting because you do have to take this into the context of why this is happening and why this is the case, which is, of course, this partnership between him and Bruno. But it gives you this really, really good dynamic that, works for now, is limited. And that's why, like somebody said when we started off, we could win the title. We can't. Think
Casemiro is a double-edged sword. Key player for how we play right now, but also limits how we could play, and can't handle 90 minutes, it seems.
I agree with that, and I think that that's also, tied to Bruno, Alfred. I think they're both together. It's a bit of a double-edged sword with both of them. Casemiro Bruno is the only partnership that can really play together there like that. There's a limiting factor in that. Legs, some other aspects to it. It is limited. And so, no, I don't think it's good. We can't win the league with that midfield. We can't. I'm sorry, but we can't. The ceiling is capped. But I think it's good enough to get us into top 4 or 5, which is, of course, where we need to be this year. But it is a serious area of concern, while it's also incredibly, impressive at the same time what he is doing. So, Casemiro, he's doing a good job. A lot of it comes down to his game intelligence, his reading of the game, all of that. Is that on-off stat not dependent on more players into the equation? That's the thing with on-off. It's just valuing how they're doing when the player's on versus off, and it doesn't take into account anything else. it's very situationally usable, but in this case, it really is. So, yeah, Casemiro is very important. And in terms of rebuilding the midfield, we talked about this yesterday, covered it in my video. We do need to, really manage to get the right dynamics on here. And one of the things that I showed is rather interesting, which we'll kind of touch on.
If we're bringing in 2 young midfielders and make Europe, we can't lose all our experience. The smart move is keeping him another year, like Madrid do, to avoid throwing the new players in too deep.
Yeah, I hear you on that too, and that's where I'm tempted, right? Is keeping them because of that reason of continuing to have some experience in the team. If you look at this dynamic here, you'll see something really, really quite similar. This is the Morita-Yeoman dynamic, where Morita is more of an attacking player, Yeoman more of a defender, but still passes the ball forward well. We're starting. This is the dynamic that he likes with his team. Obviously, there's a little bit of a difference. One of the reasons possessions one is so much higher is because we don't nearly have as much of the ball as Sporting, so there's more possessions to be won. But it's a really, really similar dynamic to what Amorim has always wanted and has always built his midfield on. So yeah, this is where we're at. When we talk about rebuilding the midfield, this is why we really need 2, because as much as there is a good dynamic there overall, as much as we've got things kind of right, as much as we've kind of got the dynamic working out, at the same time, we're going to need 2 midfielders to replace this dynamic, because I'm not sure that you can necessarily get that with just the one. I'm not sure you can, because it is a factor of both. And so it's not just Casemiro in isolation. It's a factor of Bruno and Casemiro together, how they're playing together, how they're working together, how that dynamic fits is almost more important. And so if we're going to go get somebody else, we have to match that dynamic. Take, for example, Adam Wharton. I really like Adam Wharton. I think he's a perfect midfielder for the team that we want to build and where we want to go. However, if you were to play Adam Wharton with Bruno, I don't think that's going to work. Will it work to a degree? Yes. But the problem I see there is because Adam Wharton is maybe not quite as defensively astute or aggressive as Casemiro, then you need a little bit more from that number 8 in terms of that defensive dynamic, in terms of defensive awareness, than Bruno is bringing to the table. So, that's part of the downside of it is that you have to improve on things, a little bit more. I hear that point, Tactical Devils. The issue is I don't think you can do any reading into last season at all. That being said, Casemiro and Ugarte had the best record by far in the team as a combination from when I broke it down last year. Like, it wasn't even close. Casemiro and Ugarte. But it's really, really hard to read into anything last season, to be honest, and find any notable things. I do think that one of the things with this season is we have seen enough to know certain things, but it's less about the stats, and it's more about, do the stats also match what we see with the eyes? I've watched Bruno play with Ugarte. I've watched Kabi and Ugarte play together. I've watched Bruno play with Menu like he did the other day, and you can see what's wrong. It's visually obvious in that, when that number 6, almost the lack of legs in Casemiro is almost playing to our advantage, which is that he's naturally slower getting forward, getting up the pitch. So he's limiting himself in how he's playing by reading the game and sitting deeper. Ugarte, Kabi, for different reasons, they're going forward too much and leaving these big gaps behind the midfield. And the biggest space that teams have been attempting to exploit in the team is behind the midfield and in front of the center backs for now. Asa, I did see that, and I wanted to get to that today as well, because in talking about the midfield, I understood your take on that. Where was this? You sent this to me. There we go. Why you think Baleba is still the best person. And I want to get to that, and I actually I want to talk about that. One of the things you were explaining essentially was that in your view is that Adam Wharton doesn't necessarily provide, I think you're saying, the same defensive kind of steel, as a combativeness, as Casemiro, which is one of the issues. While at the same time, Carlos Baleba, because Wharton still has more help in other positions and things like that elsewhere that are providing more defensive ability, and that the number 8 tends to be doing a little bit more dueling, all of that. However, and I actually agree with you in that sense. If you are looking for the same dynamic right now, Asa, as you had exactly the same at the moment as Bruno and Casemiro, you would not pick Adam Wharton. But if you change the dynamic a bit to a little bit more of a traditional sense where you had the number 6 who isn't doing the majority of the dueling, who's not quite as combative, and the number 8 is doing a lot more work defensively.
The midfield dynamic is not sorted, James. We just started bypassing it. No way do we now look to replace Bruno plus Case like for like. We build a new midfield.
Yes and no.
Feels ideal as a pivot in terms of their abilities to do literally everything needed for any game state, young with upside, athletic.
Yeah, and look, I agreed with both of them. I'll address both of those in a second, because this is essentially kind of the point here, is that it's like you want to balance things out, right? If Wharton is a bit less combative than Casemiro, then you want a more combative 6. But if you're getting more out of your 8 defensively in terms of awareness and all of that, then you don't need as much from your 6. Also, if you can control possession a little bit better, if you can build up a little bit better, if you can evade the press a little bit better, you're not defending as much, you don't need quite as much defensive work rate. So there's a lot of dynamics at play here, but I think the point being is that they're all they're young enough and good enough that they can all work. Wharton and Anderson works for me in that Anderson is much more combative than Bruno in that sense. He has a higher defensive awareness, so it will balance out, but you're going to get a lot more energy on the ball. Baleba, in theory, would work the same. I just don't see... my concern is specifically, he's not playing very well, and he hasn't been good this season, and he's been really unimpressive. And so, in theory, Baleba is the right 6. Okay, so don't get me wrong in that sense. In terms of your breakdown, in theory, statistically, Baleba's the right 6. But because he provides you the press evasion, provides you some of the control, he provides you with as much defensive work rate as you need. But he's been crap. And we can't avoid that. And that worries me at the moment. So it's more of an acute issue where I look at it and I go, was it a flash in the pan? Is he not going to live up to his expectations and all of that? Where I look at other guys and I say, cool, we can adjust to the qualities that Wharton brings to the table, that Anderson brings to the table, and address the midfield dynamic. Now, Damien, you say that dynamic is not sorted, we've just started bypassing it. I actually still completely disagree with that, by the way. I don't think we've started bypassing the midfield. What we've actually started bypassing is almost more the back line in terms of the build-up. But
smash a like, subscribe, and support the channel.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, buddy. But even then, I would disagree to a degree. I think that people are overstating it due to these 3 games, and I think we will see that very, very soon. Now, look, one of the reasons that to a degree we are bypassing the midfield, and I can agree with it in terms of going long and other factors, is because we have 2 midfielders that do not have the legs, that it does reduce our flexibility in how we're going to play. That doesn't mean the dynamic is wrong. It means if you had Casemiro with legs, if you had a younger Bruno or a Bruno, maybe a slightly different dynamic to Bruno who has a bit more defensive awareness, I think that you wouldn't have the same problem. But if you take, for example, I don't believe we're just going to be going long forever. Let's take, for example, Sunderland. I broke that game down, and once again, I know there was a really strong narrative in that game that all we did was play long balls. However, if you actually look at the first half, in that game, we only played 23 long balls, which was actually lower than the number of long balls played by Sunderland. In the second half, we played 36. Prior to the 2-goal lead, we were not playing long ball. The reason, however, we are avoiding the build-up is not anything crazy. And this is where I think people are making too many assessments far too quickly. Against Sunderland, until we had the 2-0 lead, we did not play long ball. We played long ball to protect the lead, a tactical in-game adjustment to reduce pressure once we knew a team was going to have to attack us more and more. Against Liverpool and Brighton, you're talking about two of the most organized presses in football, two of the most consistent, highly technical, energetic, and well-organized teams. We know United aren't that good yet. That doesn't mean we're not going to play build-up ever, and that we're not going to move the ball up the pitch, via passing out the back ever. However, so what? We have a hooper at number 9, 6'6" giant, can leap like a monster. We would be stupid not to utilize that. Because sometimes it's just better. If you can get the ball up the pitch quicker, it's better. Now, against Brighton, where I disagree with the idea that we bypassed the midfield is only in one sense. Only in one sense did we bypass the midfield. We bypassed the midfield because we didn't want to play through the press. However, our midfield was fundamental to our own press and attacking teams. In fact, it reminds me a lot of I'm going to do it again. If you remember early Klopp, which we'll get to in the press and attack, launch the ball up the pitch, press hard, win it, attack quickly. It works. At the end of the day, who's there to say that build-up is even important? For a long, long time, most teams played not by playing out the back. It's more of a newer thing. And with the way that we're playing more direct these days and the way that football is going in general, who cares? Let's play long more than we play short. Ruben Amorim's team has always been a long ball team, which some people don't think is a real football, and has had some people label him as like the, Portuguese Sam Allardyce. But the fact of the matter is, who cares? That's where football is going again, and that is the direction that it has shifted, is being able to play long ball. It's going to be the ability to play long ball through an organized press is simply, beating a team at taking away one of their main advantages that they do have. I think Brighton would have loved to have bypassed our press, but our press killed them. I think they would have loved to be able to play long ball against us, wouldn't they? But the fact that they couldn't be successful at playing long ball against us is the main reason we were able to beat them. They couldn't play through our press. So the fact that they were unable to bypass their midfield is one of the biggest reasons why we beat them. That lack of flexibility, that lack of tactical awareness, that lack of having the tools that we have where we can go long is one of the main reasons we beat Brighton. We were a much, much better pressing side than, and they couldn't go over the top of our press while we went over the top of theirs. And that's why we won. Sometimes it's that simple. If you face a press you can't deal with, some presses are really good. So, it's a counter to the press possession type of things. Now, we will be flexible. We were flexible against Sunderland, but against Liverpool and Brighton, we had two examples, again, of teams that are extremely, extremely well organized. So I disagree that we don't have multiple solutions. You'll find that on the weekend that we will. We played through Arsenal in week 1, if you recall. We've played through Arsenal in multiple different situations. At the same time, statistically, Bruno and Casemiro are progressing the ball at an extremely high level this year. So there's no way that we're just not passing through the midfield. We are pressing through the midfield. We are moving the ball through the middle. In fact, we're moving it through the middle more than I think we thought we would to start the season. A lot more than I thought we would to start the season. So let me pick that one up, Asta. If we change the dynamic to make the 8 more combative, then I think we might need to get rid of Mainu and or Bruno because neither can do it. Seems like too much change and too expensive to replace. Well, the problem is that we're going to replace Bruno at some point. We're going to replace we're going to replace Bruno at some point, and we don't know what the future is in terms of Kabi. We really don't know what the future is there. But in terms of building, again, there's a lot of different dynamics. If we want to go with a more similar to Casemiro, Morten Holmand is pretty much identical. João Gomez is an option. Elliot Anderson is an option for one of those midfielders. Buwadi is a young player that could fit into there and all of that. So there's a ton of different options, that they're going to be looking at right now. And I can tell you that for sure that the decision hasn't been made, but I can also say they're 100% have decided that they're looking at 2 midfielders right now. I don't know what that says for the future. So as to that point, Asa, who's going to leave? Some people are going to leave. So, you're thinking of, well, it's too much change. Who's leaving? I don't know. We can't really say, and we can't really know at this point in time who is leaving. But yeah, we don't know. We really, really, really don't know. I really like João Gomez. I really, really like João Gomez quite a lot, actually. We've been following him for some time. He's a very, very tenacious, good on the ball as well, defensive midfielder. If Wolves get relegated, he's still only 24 years old as well. I really, 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 really like João Gomez. And if he's affordable, if we're signing 2 midfielders, I think he's experienced enough and has shown enough. You could put him in almost either position, 8 or 6 in game, and he can do it. I'm a big, big fan of João Gomez. I've been talking about him for some years, and I know United have been following him. Whether he's one that comes back into the radar. Someone reminded me the other day, and I was like, yeah, that's right. João Gomez is one I would really like to see here. He's strong on the ball. He's very, very tactically astute and aware of where to play. I think he could do a very good job in a couple of different positions. And he would also be familiar with the role. Now, I would probably put him into the 8 more than I would the 6. But the same goes for Elliot Anderson for me. The way that Elliot Anderson plays, if you're sticking Elliot Anderson in the 6, you're taking away a massive, massive part of his game and some of the ability that he has. I think he would be much, much better in the 8. Why limit him? The 6 is a little bit of a more limited position. It's somebody that you want to, the 6, you want to sit a bit more. Putting Elliot Anderson in the 6 would be throwing away half of his best attributes. Like if you look at the carrying of the ball, he doesn't want that out of the 6 running with the ball forward. He doesn't want the 6 getting up there so much. He wants the 6 to be sitting a bit more in front of the back 3 out of possession, covering in those kinds of gaps. Now they need to be good, have more legs than Casemiro, be a little more up and down. But yeah, so I'm only really looking at names that we're following that I can say today that I do know we're following, and these are ones that we're looking at. Now, I see a lot of people who've talked about Amadou Onana, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't want Onana, and I'll tell you specifically why. Again, I think he makes more sense as an 8. Yes, he's combative. Yes, he's this and that. His favored means of progression is carrying the ball. It's the Kobbie Mainoo problem to a large degree. It's the Kobbie Mainoo problem. You don't want him to carry the ball forward. And that's Onana's strength on the ball for me is his driving the ball forward with powerful runs and things like that. That's really not necessarily what we want from the 6. I think it's the opposite of kind of what we're looking for. There's a lot of guys we're talking about who are really like, in that color, give me better colors, are more like 8s at this point in time. Not really that sitting 6. And the thing with Elliot Anderson is, I think, someone said like Tuchel's deployed him as 6. Again, big difference if you're playing in a 3-man midfield and things like that. The 8, we're going to need passing the ball forward and carrying and things like that as well. Gallagher's an interesting player that I don't think the stats are going to tell us much at all about him at this point in time. But yeah, and maybe we'll get him to add us another like combative option there. But I'm just saying that once again, in terms of the traits, the 6 needs to be a high percentage dual winning, deep sitting player, and the ability to move the ball without having to run forward because they're not always that pacey. They have to have really intelligent reading of the game. It's fundamental to that position off the ball. Don't want them getting caught forward so much, okay? And with the 8, you want them to be able to do everything. An all-arounder. So, anyway, there's a whole lot. Yeomand and 6. The reason I'm fixed on Wharton and Yeomand at 6 right now is after Baleba, Yeomand and Wharton were the top targets for United. I'm telling you that as a fact. Wharton and Yeomand were the top targets, the top alternates for United at the 6 after Baleba. They were. And they make a lot of sense. And when you really start to look at how we're building a team in terms of attributes, you don't ignore that kind of information. You don't ignore that they're looking at it. You look at it and understand it. And especially in looking at Casemiro, you go, well, why would we be looking at those? Because these are 3 of the same players. Obviously, they have slightly different attributes and things like that, but they have 3 of the same strengths. And so it makes a lot of sense. And when you even take Baleba from last year, even though his stats are a bit funky, you know that he was a very, very good. He was really being looked at for his overall skill set and his combativeness and things like that. Look, obviously, Yeoman's the least exciting name on there of that, but this is why they're looking at that. I'm trying to throw some other names I know they've been looking at, like I say, Buwadi and João Gomez and Elliot Anderson and these things that they are looking at, but that may be for different positions, different facets in the midfield. But since we're looking at 2, the dynamic could change a little bit. I'm just talking about we still need this guy. Who's going to win a lot of possessions and sit kind of deep? I think Yeoman's got a bit of a cap ceiling, even though he's the right guy. Yeah. What midfield partnership in the history of football would fit the system the best? Well, one is screaming for a Michael Carrick, right? If we're looking at what you would ask for right now, Michael Carrick would be, to me, in a way, the ideal 6 for this. Now, some people didn't rate Michael Carrick like that when he was playing at the time, but Casemiro is basically being asked to do what Michael Carrick was doing really, really well, and what Michael Carrick was good at. The ability to spray the ball around. Yes, you can contribute in the attack. The ability to move the ball to sit. But yeah, Matic and Conte is a dynamic. Carrick and whoever else, I don't know. You know, you could take a lot of United's old midfielders and they work because a lot of them were great. Roy Keane would be the perfect number 6. You know, Casemiro and Cruz. You know what I mean? Like, that works too. If you want to look at an option that included Casemiro in it, Casemiro and Cruz as an option, or Casemiro and Modric, whichever you're considering 2 of the 3. I know it was a 3-man midfield, but there you go. Another one like that. You know what I mean? And yeah, Carrick also had good players next to him who are combative, and that's important to the dynamic as well. You need to have extra combative players next to you also, even for that deep sitting 6 kind of role. So it's about having 2 hard working players in that midfield at the same time. Bruno's work rate is great. His defensive awareness sometimes is fading, but a lot of interesting options there. Then I want to talk about this new kind of wingback name. Look, we're just going to have to keep an eye on this whole midfield situation. We're looking at 2. There's a lot of names that are being built up in the list. At some point, it'll start to narrow down, you know, and we'll start to hear more about who specifically, you know, we're looking at and everything there. No, I know Baleba can do both. I know Baleba to do both. The biggest problem I have with Baleba is he's been shit. I know in theory, Baleba is perfect. He can do any role we want in there and add to the midfield. He's been shit. That's all I got to say. He's been shit. I don't know.
We should pay what it takes, within reason, to get Semenyo in Jan. Versatile across the front three or WB, and cover Afcon absences. Could we get him for £85M?
Yeah.
What are your contacts suggesting?
Yeah, I hear you on that. I hear you on that on Semenyo. Look, for the wingback position, he's perfect. You know, he is perfect. He can do whatever we would want. He can play in any of the positions. It would be insane, okay? It would be. But, and I would love to see United try, and I hope they do try, because I know they have a strong interest in him. I think his release clause is somewhere in the range of 70 to 80 million. He's also going to AFCON too. But, you know, so it would be expensive, doable, but how much money would we want to put to that versus the midfield? I don't know. And how viable is it? I would suggest that, you know, again, I said last week, which is kind of why I've looked away from it a little bit, that I was hearing some rumors certainly pushing him towards another club. At the same time, if United are starting to look good, and these other clubs are looking bad, you never know. I don't want to like deny the possibility that we could convince some, because you look at Mbumo, you look at Cunha, like you look at what we've done to get players to join us, Šeško. You know, you never say never with these guys, because we're Manchester United at the end of the day. And if we're doing well, and if we're on the up and up, then that's the idea. But a poor start to the season doesn't mean Baleba's lost his skill set. Yes, but he's only done it. Here's the problem, okay? When you're a very young player, and you've only had a half of a good season, and your club is going to demand a lot of money for your skill set. You go, Evan Ferguson looked like a world beater for about 6 months at Brighton, or a year. Where is he now? Like, you need consistency. We have done this thing. We took a punt on Højlund because of half a good season, and we spent 70 million. We've made these mistakes in the past. It just because it's not about them poofing away. I think people are too maybe too straight line in terms of like how player development works. Every good young player is incredibly skilled, like Garnacho. That doesn't mean it's going to work. There are super talented players, we've seen so many of them at United, that never turn their career into anything. There's so much more to it than that. You know what I'm saying? There's so much more to it than just a skill set. People have to be able to express that, put it out there, and get on the pitch. Look at Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho was a world beater. Literally, 40 goal assist seasons. Did his skill just vanish? Why can't Jadon Sancho play football anymore? Why? He was one of the most talented young players I've ever seen, and most people have ever seen, and his numbers were not a joke. They were Champions League, everything. What happened? We cannot buy players on hope that they will show and develop that skill set, because the pressure at United is 10 times anywhere else. It's hard to develop at United. That's why we need players who are not coming to United to develop, especially for big money. If we're paying money for them, they've got to come here and be ready. We can't develop players because it's too big a club to develop players. Let me rephrase that. We cannot develop players for big money because the demands instantly are too much for them to be development players. We can develop affordable players. We can develop young players. We can do all of that, but we cannot develop expensive young players who are not presently doing great. And I don't think that's much going to change. Lenny Yoro is an interesting one. He may end up being the exception to the rule, but even then, I think, one, he was already a bit more proven than Baleba. He's also got a fair bit of time from out of the spotlight and things, right? Because we have a lot of center backs, which has helped to a degree. I mean, it's helped quite a bit, in fact. Baleba comes in, you're asking him to start every single week. Look at the situation with Kobe right now. As a comparison, by the way. Look at it with Kobe right now. Look at the clamor for Kobe. All the dialogue is heavy around Kobe. And I'm not saying like good, bad, and different. Yeah, Euro's played in Europe, European competitions and all that as well. But look at what's happening with Kobe right now. Like, it's not that easy, man. And the dialogue gets crazy, and we didn't even pay a lot of money for Kobe. So it's, you know, it's a really, really, really interesting. I don't know. There's just a lot that it's just complicated, is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to spit down or say that anything's not going to work out for Kobe or anything like that. I'm just saying it is so complicated. But what United can't afford to do is buy players when they're not doing well. Look at Cunha. Look at Mbumo. These are players who were firing when they were doing it. Look at Lamens. Yes, he's only had one season, but he was affordable, and he was doing really well. You know, we paid a fair bit for Šeško, but he's had like 3 or 4 seasons. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's intriguing there. But when you spend that huge money, that's when it gets really, really difficult, and that's my concern over Baleba. Now, again, on Semenyo, I think would be a really, really obviously the ideal option. I think the problem is that where the hell can we find a wingback? You know, like I've seen people say, like you know, where can we find a wingback? Where do we get wingbacks? There's not a lot of wingbacks out there. There's not a lot of wingbacks out there. It's not a natural sort of position. You know, there's not a ton of like options. That's why Ruben Amorim at Sporting converted wingers and things like that. So it's more like, do they have the traits? And that's where you look at someone like Semenyo. So this morning we got the link to Karim Alabegovic, okay? And he plays as sort of a wide winger /10, all of that. Not naturally, of course, a wingback or anything like that, though I think also in the system he's playing when that's not going to happen anyway. But I take a young player like him, both-footed, 6'1", 18 years old. I would love to see us, you know, buy a player like this that we could then move into these different kinds of positions. You know, I would love to see that. A player, getting a young player like this. From the little bit that I've seen, I'm going, yeah, might as well. Because alternatively, our other options are, if you look at like who could do wing back really well, you want to go for Nuno Mendes. If you want a high quality one, impossible to get him out of PSG. You know, Ait Nouri moved to City. You're going to spend a lot of money. How much is Minte going to cost? Because I like him too. You're going to convert wingers, or you're going to pay insane amounts of money for the best fullbacks in the world that are so good in terms of attacking. You know what I mean? So it's like you're going to do one or the other either way. DeMarco makes a ton of sense. How old is DeMarco? I think I talked about that in a different video previously. Like, DeMarco would be perfect. He's 27 years old. All right. When does his contract up? And when is that going to end? You know, and how much would he cost? And would he fit? And all of that. Like, there's a few things there where you look at it and you go, like, would be nice, but it's hard, man. It's hard. Like, there's wingers we can convert that would be able to do these types of positions, and there's fullbacks who are exceptional. But the expense that we're talking about here for a lot of these is rough. What would DeMarco cost? Diego Moreira. Yeah, there's options. I'm interested. I'm just saying I really like the idea of some kind of young player like this link that we have and converting them. What happened to development of Montato as the club move on from him? No, he's playing consistently in the under 21s now. He's quite young, but he needs time. He needs time at the under 21s. We've got a bunch of we have a bunch of development prospects at left wing back. I agree. The thing with a kid like that is maybe he could play both sides because we don't really have a right wing back backup for Ahmad. So maybe he'd be more of a right wing back. I don't know. But yeah, it's a challenging position. Anthony Robinson, I quite like. But he's also 29 and had some injuries, doesn't he? So yeah, I don't have the easy answer to this to say what we should get for a wingback position. I think that's why it's complicated to figure it out. So I'm okay with links like this to this young player, because it could give us another option. Because alternatively, you're going to have to go and spend big money for someone like this. But I hope they come up with something interesting and crazy. I know they're looking at it. I know they want to address something here in addition to those two midfielders. So I guess we'll see, what they come up with. But I think we can use two wingbacks, funnily enough. Like, I think we could use one who could cover Ahmad, but I also think we need a starter on the left side as well. I think we need both. So I'm looking at both aspects of that. Like, could someone like this kid who is linked to us be the backup for Ahmad? And could we get somebody else on maybe we can get someone else on the left too. But Semenyo's perfect, but we'll see. The next thing I want to show, which is rather interesting, is stylistically, how United are playing these days, I think is rather intriguing. I was just kind of looking at our stats, and one of the things that I found, this was a cool chart. This is counterattacks per 90 and PPDA. So in some of the years past, we'd be a top counterattacking team, but we'd be sitting over here. We don't press, we do all of that. This is an impressive graph because not only are United in a good range from a pressing standpoint, we could see this against Brighton, but at high, fast counterattacking as well. And I got to say, it feels like United football. Press well, organize well, win the ball back, attack fast as hell, and go and score goals. It feels like the way United want to play. You know what I mean? It feels like it's how United should be playing football. It feels fun. Like, this is where I was saying the other day that I'm enjoying the way that we play a lot more than I have. Because, counterattacking can be fun, but it's not fun when you're sat deep, not pressing, not defending, with any kind of height, not winning the ball back quickly, and you're spending these long games with no attacks and all of that. This is a lot more like Jurgen Klopp type football. It is. It's rock and roll. It's quick. It's fast. It's also what I liked about Pochettino's football when he was at Spurs, is that while they had possession, to a degree, it was also a team that pressed and attacked very, very quickly at times. And I think this is only going to get better as we keep getting better. And if you were to look at the clubs in this kind of bracket up here, a lot of the clubs, you enjoy the way they play football. Brighton, Arsenal, Liverpool. I don't know about Arsenal to a degree, mostly because they score off of set pieces. But historically, over the last few years, these are some of the more entertaining teams in football. From mid-table clubs like Brighton and Bournemouth that play good football to, Liverpool and that. But United play good, entertaining, fun football, and I really enjoy it. And then you look at this, I did find it hilarious just how the exact opposite end of the spectrum, Palace is on and all of that. So it's really quite interesting to see, the way that we play and how it's evolving into this fast attacking team. Now, as we get better and better, obviously we're going to want to see a little bit more settled possession and things like that as well. We're going to want to see that. We're going to want to see that we can, have a bit more of the ball, control the game in a little bit of different ways. But this is good, especially in the way that modern football is going. There's so many like examples statistically kind of underpinning the way that we want to play, and that, we do play well we are a good team. And I really wish we were in Europe, because these are the types of teams that can somewhat thrive in Europe, as we saw with Liverpool, getting to 2 Champions League finals. I think we'll be, and we saw that last year. We were killing teams in Europe. Even when we were shit, we were able to get all the way to the European final. So I think that this style is going to translate well to, working on, being able to get better and better, as we go moving forward. If you look at passes per possession, it's kind of middle of the pack. So we're not pass, but we're also not pure direct one pass in attacking football. So this is where I was saying the other day, or at the beginning of this video, while I understand this idea that, there's a feeling like we only play direct, I just don't think that that's true. Now, the last few games has it been more direct for sure, but our sequences for building up goals and scoring against Sunderland and against Brighton, some of them were actually quite decent in chance creation. So I think we've actually got, as I see it, quite a balanced team at this point in time. Our positional tacks are also quite good. It's not like we're low on anything. And I just, United are very, very balanced at this point in time. I think this is a team that is rounding itself out. And as we get better and better, we're going to see more and more of improvements in the areas that still need improvement at this point in time. Now, look, we can lose and immediately people will panic again, right? We could go in and have a bad game against Forest and all that. But the reason I talk about this stuff and everything, and I'm not getting so high off of the 3 wins versus before. I've had the same level of expectation for the season when we were shit to when we're winning games now, or when we weren't winning games to when we're winning games now. If we lose against Forest, you know what it'll change for me? Nothing. We lose against Spurs, you know what it'll change for me? Nothing. Because I know what we're trying to do. I understand it. I can see it. It's all about execution and application now. And it's, of course, as well about improving in the personnel. And I think what the wins hopefully have shown people is the truth of that. And that's why this thing bothers me, to get into this yap. That's why this thing bothers me when the heavy claims are that we're only winning now because of huge changes to the approach and things like that, is because you would think it's trying to give credit to the manager. And it's the exact opposite. I know what the game is, okay? It's the exact opposite of giving credit to the manager. In fact, what it's really saying is when we lose again, it's the manager's fault, because something won't work, and it'll be that he's changed it again to go to something that didn't work. And why is he stupid? Why doesn't he get this? That's the problem with that narrative, and it's why I take a big, big issue with it, is that if you couldn't see what we were trying to do, that we were not executing, that now we are, it's not to say there are any small tweaks in approach to certain things, then it's all, you're just laying the groundwork to go right back and say, well, as soon as things don't go great, because we're going to lose games again, that it's the manager's fault. The minute we lose again, the same people who are saying we tweaked it and did it really and changed the system and now it's working are going to jump back and say, why did he do this? And now it's not working. I guarantee it, 100%. But what is more likely? A manager who's gone into every press conference and saying, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change. I would rather walk than change. I would quit than change. They're going to have to sack me before I change. One of the most strong-headed guys who has made very clear on a million occasions that he's not going to change. Do you think he changed, or do you think the players have just learned his system a little bit better and are starting to get it? What do you think is more likely? It's obviously the latter. For weeks, Ruben would go into games, and what did he say in the press conferences? He would say, it's not about this and that. It's not about the system. They don't do the basics every game. After Grimsby, what did he say? He said, the players spoke loudly for me. They don't do the basics every single game. When he goes into the next game and says, I don't know what we're going to get next week, It is not his tactical approach that is changing game by game. It is not his system that is changing game by game. It is not all of that that is changing game by game. It's that the players are starting to get it. The one thing he's doing a little different, the only thing is he has better players that are making it onto the pitch now. The fact that he has Lammens, who is capable of passing out of pressure with both feet, means you can utilize choices on the pitch. And that is what appears to be change. The team are getting it, and that means that there are more choices that can be made on the pitch at this point in time that allow for different opportunities. Because in every system, it's providing you with a platform. It's providing you with a platform to make choices in there. And then you have to make the right choices. And as players get it more and more, they're going to understand that platform better. And there's going to become more choices available. And then they're going to learn to better make those choices. And that's what's happening. If we go into the next game and the pressing shape is screwed up and the defensive shape is screwed up, you know what it's not? You know what it's not? It is not him changing his shape out of possession. It is not him changing his shape in instruction. It is not him changing 1 week to the next, because you can't. Things don't change that quickly. You can't change your whole system from one game to the next. It has changed because the personnel have changed and the personnel have improved. We used to go long. People have acted like this is a new thing. No. Last season, we were going long all the time. You know, we were going long last season all the time. What was the difference? Rasmus Højlund. How many times did we talk about it? That every ball into Rasmus Højlund was a turnover. Now who's in there? Benjamin Šeško. Now who's in there? Cunha. Now who's in there? Mbumo. Now who's in there? Mount. We were doing a lot of the things we used to do, but they're working. And I want to show you. I'm going to show you this. And it's amazing to see people kind of waking up to this, because I'm going to show you with 3 videos I made a year ago, during the summer, and more recently to talk about this. And I'm just going to play like 30 seconds from each, okay? Because it was like, the 4-4-2, it's brand new, a new adjustment. No, it ain't. All right, here's a year ago. All right, this is 11 months ago, about Ruben Amorim's profile and how he wants to play with those forwards. All right. So you'll often have 2 running in the channels and 1 that floats around. So you can go watch this video. I explained very clearly in that video from 11 months ago, perfectly timed pause face, that Ruben Amorim's system at Sporting with the 3 forwards often had 2 playing up top as runners, while 1 would drop in. 4-4-2. 4-4-2. Look what happens if you take this exact shape right here and you change it a little bit. 1 fullback drops back, 1 10 drops in behind the front 2, and you have a 4-4-2. Congratulations. I talked about this 11 months ago. He's always played a 4-4-2 with his forwards at Sporting. Well, not always, I should say, because he actually made adjustments year by year, but his most recent iteration was to have it play more like 2 runners, 1 who was floating out beforehand. He's always wanted this. Now, we weren't seeing at United, but we are starting to see it now. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Okay. Listen to this. When they made the assessment this year to get the forwards, you have to realize that it's not that they don't want to upgrade on the midfielder. Don't get me wrong. They obviously do. I'm not denying that in the slightest, and I never will. But the way he has the feeling of moving Bruno deep is twofold. Number 1, that this is Cunha and not Alejandro Garnacho. That Alejandro Garnacho never supported the midfield, so it made the problem 10 times worse. Because instead of having a 3-man midfield, you've got Garnacho sprinting down here, Højlund working on a defender, and your right 10 was sometimes dropping, sometimes not, and you end up with big gaps between the teams, between the players. Cunha dropping in fixes a big... And then I'll show you the next bit. All right, there's one more thing from this video I want to show you. Because this is from the Everton game. Right in the beginning of the game. And, where I was complaining about the center backs. The warning signs are already here. This is where United are in possession. And I want you to see that you have these attackers from Everton that all step up. And when United attack goes forward, the back line does not follow. They stay way too deep, and you can already start to see that they need to be pressing up to cover their man. Otherwise, when and if United lose the ball, there are huge spaces available. So those warnings. So again, just making that point once again, like the center back stepping up, not a new thing. Not a new thing. The 10s dropping, not a new thing. The 4-4-2, not a new thing. You're just recognizing it because they're starting to be able to execute it. And I have one more. Okay. And then I'll kind of get off of my soapbox on this. So the biggest failings are the 10s not dropping, which we saw 3 months ago more with Cunha. Even Mantato in the second half was getting it, even though this was after Leeds preseason particularly well. This pass from the center back into the 10s is vital. Against Chelsea, one of the reasons he liked the team he put out in that game and rated their performance in the first half is we saw that. Those passes from the center back into Mount in the 10 in that position, it's why Mount started the final. He was dropping into the right zones. The passes were coming through from the center backs to the 10s, and United were able to progress up the pitch really well. There you go. So again, even explained there why Mount was starting and why Mount has been starting, because which you saw as we got into the season, as Mount got selected more and more and more, because he was dropping in. Cunha was playing in the 9. Cunha does it as well, but he was playing at the 9, not the 10, so he wasn't dropping in as much because he was playing at the 9. So none of this is new. None of this is new. The pretense that this is all some crazy adjustment isn't new. The only thing that has actually changed on the pitch is that we are going long a bit more to beat the press because we actually have players capable of knocking down and winning the ball. That's it. Nothing else. And we have a goalkeeper who's semi-competent too. Nothing else has changed. Mount for me was the catalyst to get us started on a good form. Correct. And he noticed that at the end of last season against Chelsea. That's why he started him in the final against Tottenham, right? Even though we didn't win that game. All that's happened is they're starting to get it. We have Ahmad at wingback. He gets it. He makes the right runs, the right positions, the right pressing, the right everything. Cunha and Mount are getting it as 10s, and Mbeumo is being that outlet on the right. So it bothers me because it's taking credit away from the fact that his stubbornness and his insistence that his system is not the issue, that it's the execution of the basics and getting through that is now working. He was absolutely right. He was 100% correct. Top to bottom, he was totally correct on all of it. He was. This is his system. What we are seeing is the closest thing to Sporting. It's the closest thing to Sporting, and the way that he was playing, what we've seen in the last few weeks, it's very, very close, right? And so people are not getting it. And when I was talking through this early part of the season about the stats, the underlyings, the things like that, what I kept pointing out is, look, there's a lot of things happening here and that are working, but it's just not clicking yet. And we will get there. He has not changed it. But here's why people are saying this, because there's two different types of people, all right? And I want to be clear on this, all right? I want to be clear on this. A lot of people don't want to be like tactical experts and things like this, okay? There's a lot of people that haven't watched Sporting. They did not watch years of Sporting, okay? And so what do you have is what you see right in front of you, which is that United were doing something one way, a lot of games pressing in a weird shape, no 4-4-2, all sorts of stuff, right? They're doing that, and then a few games later, it's different. What is the obvious conclusion? That the managers changed the system and instructions. In terms of a casual observation, in terms of your general average United fan, that's what it looks like. Understandably, that's what it looks like. I get it. I understand why people think that, right? I understand that. It makes sense, actually. You have only as evidence what you've seen at United, which is that it was a certain way and now it's a different way. You don't have a baseline. My biggest complaint comes to people who are presenting tactical breakdowns on team. If you didn't watch a long time of Sporting, then you don't know what it's supposed to look like. Because at United, what you're seeing was clearly to me not what he wanted. Now, his job and the effectiveness of his job was to get this team to understand how he wants to play and to start playing that way. That's his job. If they're not doing it, that doesn't mean he's faultless in it. That doesn't mean he's not to blame in it. That's the manager's job. Get the players on board, get them to understand it, get them to execute it. But that's why I kept saying it's not the system, it's not the system, it's not the system, because we're not seeing the system, because he wasn't getting the players necessarily to buy into it or to do it enough. Now, my argument to that was always last season, shit players, no preseason, no time. This season, we were always going to need to give him time to get the players on board, get them to understand it. And I said at Sunderland, I think something has clicked. And I think they're getting it now. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. Everything's crisper. There's less confusion. They seem to know where to be, where to go, and it's all working. So I get it. When people look like, when other fans and other people and other stuff should look at it and they go, well, something's changed. Of course. On the surface level, 100%, something has changed. If this was a manager that I didn't watch years of, I don't think I would be able to make this kind of assessment. Okay, I don't think I would be able to recognize the things that I've recognized here, because I wouldn't have known before what it was supposed to look like. You need to know. You need to have that baseline. Like, there's your painting, right? You got a painting on the wall, and you're trying to paint it right here, and you're going, that's what it's supposed to look like. All right, that's what it's supposed to look like. If you don't have that painting, you won't know what it's supposed to look like, so you can only see what's in front of you. You don't know what the intention is at the end of it. And so I understand. And it's easier to look at it on that basis. So I get why this has happened. I get why a lot of people, and people, again, I'm not like having an attack on all these people or like, whatever, because a lot of them, people I speak with on the View and good friends of mine and things like that, like, they might have this. They have this impression. I get it. I know why. I understand. It makes sense. What I'm saying though is that if you're presenting if you're doing tactical presentations and threads on Twitter and things like that, what I'm asking you to do is go watch a year of sporting. I'm saying 20 fucking games in the league, not one Europa League game. Go watch 20 games in the league in Portugal from his time there. Go watch it, and then watch each of those positions, watch all the things we've talked about, and then look at the team and say, and it'll be like Danny DeVito, I get it. You know what I mean? That's all I'm asking for, because then you will understand. I'm not talking about anybody specific. I'm really not. I'm just saying I've seen it in general. There was that one guy I was arguing with on Twitter and things like that who suddenly, I was begging for these changes. No, you fucking weren't. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're just being a dick, and you've been proven wrong, and you can't accept that. You know what I'm saying? Besides him, it's not it's not targeted at anybody. The reason I'm saying it is the point I made at the beginning. The reason I'm saying this is that if we lose and it looks different, it's not the manager changing. It's still early. We need more time. We need more time. I've seen enough to say I know what he wants to do. It will work. They're not going to be perfect at it every week. They're going to have blips. They're going to have bad games, all of that. Don't let people make it immediately about the manager for your own sanity. Understand that we are riding the wave and the game is improving and there's going to be ups and downs, but the trend is upwards. Okay? But it's not that. If you believe it's about the manager changing the system, and the next time we lose, you're going to lose all confidence, and you shouldn't. And you shouldn't. Okay? You shouldn't. You shouldn't lose all confidence if we lose. If we lose to Forest this weekend, you know what it should do? Nothing. It should tell you, good, they just haven't got it yet. They haven't got it all in yet, and there's improvements that we need in the team. That's it. Am I saying that means Emram's forever the guy? You know what I mean? No. I'm saying at the end of the season, you will be able to judge. If we're losing games right now, and some games go badly after this good little run of wins, it doesn't matter. It's not changing anything, okay? By the end of the season, I think is when we can really judge, did Amorim get through to this team, get them fully on board, and get them buying in? Because that is his job. It's not changing the system. It's getting these players to play it, to understand it, and to carry it out. And that I will judge him for later on. You know, I think that's going to take more time to pass that judgment. You know, so he still has to be successful. And I think there's enough time that in the second half of the season, we should be really, really good. I've always said that from December, January onward, we need to be flying and we need to get into the top 5. I'm still expecting some inconsistencies over the next month. Okay. But just understand what happens. You know what I mean? That's all. That's just me. I'm not telling you what to do, but you're here. You're part of my community. I'm going to recommend what I see, what I understand, and maybe you see some sense in it. All right. I'm speaking to you. You know what I mean? I'm speaking to you and just telling you what I think. So there you go. That's my rant for the day. I'll probably make a video on that as well. You know, just kind of showing like, hey, listen, this is really what's going on, and all of that. Okay. That's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Tomorrow, I'll probably make that video. Might be back with a live. Thursday, doing a video with Footy with an Edge, who also did a nice takedown of the Athletics thing on those long shots and stuff. Because like I said, there's been a lot of bullshit out there. And there's things like that do bother me. They're not even made by United fans, and it's just to rile people up, and it's totally inaccurate. Good guy, same kind of view as me on this whole Amorim thing since the start. And we'll be doing a couple videos, one on his channel, one on mine on Thursday. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then obviously, you know, more videos, more lives, and we'll get to the games. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you for all the donations. Thank you for all the new memberships. Please do make sure to smash a like on your way out. It costs nothing. It takes a second. You get a nice little, you know, thing glowing on the thumbs up, and it means a lot to me. Okay. Thank you guys. I will see you later. Appreciate you all. Have a good rest of your day.